Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry about the slight delay there. We had a few technical issues that we were just ironing out, but all seems to be fine now. So that is the beauty of live broadcasting, I guess. So welcome to Drapers Connects. My name is Kirsty McGregor. I'm the editor of Drapers. Drapers has been the fashion industry Bible since 1887, bringing you business intelligence, breaking news, and the latest product trends across multiple channels, from print to our newsletters, social media, and online. Drapers Connects brings the industry together through live interviews and panel discussions with business leaders and fashion insiders. These digital events take place on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and you can browse the schedule or register for future events by visiting drapersonline.com/connects. If you're watching live on Zoom, please feel free to ask questions through the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen, and I will put as many as possible to our speaker. Today, we're joined by Paul Hayes, Chief Executive of Cornish women's wear brand Seasalt, which has 70 stores across the UK and Ireland, hundreds of wholesale stockists, and employs about 1,000 people across the UK and Ireland. Paul joined Seasalt in 2013, following stints at brands such as Timberland and Berghaus, and has 25 years of fashion experience under his belt. He has since steered Seasalt through several years of impressive growth. So welcome, Paul, and I'm glad to see you after that slightly hairy beginning there where things weren't quite working. I must say I'm very envious of the fact that you are in Cornwall. Presumably that means you've been able to take your daily exercise during lockdown on the beach, have you?
Well, that's one of those things, isn't it, when you're asked the question, how are you handling lockdown, and this period we're still going through now, and the answer is yes. We've been very fortunate. We do live in a very beautiful area with access to lots of walking, where there's very few people around as well. So it's been very, very helpful.
Sounds like quite a contrast to South London, I have to say. So how have you been finding lockdown from a management perspective, the challenge of managing the team remotely? Is that something you're used to doing, or would you normally otherwise be in the office most days?
It has been the norm at certain points in my career, I guess, but since moving to Seasalt, I've got a 20-minute commute to the office each day. So I suppose personally, I've got quite used to being in the office. That being said, from a personal point of view, I think we've handled it pretty well. There's three of us that live here. And other than the initial settling in period of getting used to who's working where during the day, few arguments over the volume of music from time to time, and equally the odd walk-on bit from either the cat or the dog. Mm-hmm. I think personally we've handled it pretty well. I think from a team perspective, we recognised the threat pretty early on, so we developed a continuity plan very early in March, actually, which saw people start leaving the office throughout March. So we were getting used to it as we eased into that. So 25% of the employees went around middle of the month, and then 50% by the end of the month we were completely out of the offices, and obviously then on to closing the stores down and working with the DC. So I guess people eased their way into it. From a management perspective, I'm fortunate I've got a great management team who are very well connected. We speak individually a lot during the week, I guess, but we've also earmarked specific times we catch up individually. We meet as a group once a week and share what's going on across the business. And even from a group board perspective, we've ensured throughout this period we've met on a weekly basis as well. So there's a good sharing of information, and everybody's very, very clear on what we're needing to do through this period and beyond, really.
And so looking back to the beginning of the year, you mentioned that you actually kind of put planning in place reasonably early on, and you were able to stagger some of those decisions throughout March in terms of staffing levels, things like that. So can you describe when you sort of, when coronavirus first started to have an impact on the business? Was it on the supply chain sort of towards the beginning of the year? Is that how you knew that it was, something that you were going to have to quickly start to adjust to on a bigger level?
Yeah, I mean, I think things gathered pace pretty quickly. In February, I guess, like many other retailers in particular, within our industry, we were focused very much on the supply chain and the impact of getting product through from China. And I can remember actually on the 3rd of March, we were in a group board meeting actually talking about future plans and a digital transformation project that we were working on. And I guess that very quickly moved towards the continuity plan and identifying that actually, hey, this was going to be a far bigger deal. So we acted on that pretty quickly in terms of getting plans into place. So I have to say our business systems team did an excellent job in supporting the business early on and getting people moving out of the business. So actually the continuity of managing the stock, we already had people at home working on that on a day-to-day basis, which of course that's where it started.
So you obviously you had to close down those sort of roughly 70 stores across the UK and Ireland, but you continued operating online throughout this whole period. So tell me about the kind of what safety measures you had to put in place, what it looked like in those early days when you were having to suddenly switch to your whole focus was on online and trying to fulfill orders that were coming in there whilst social distancing, etc.
Yeah. Well, the way we've approached this, 3 phases to it really. So there's a continuity piece, which I'll come back to, revival, which is the phase we're kind of going through now. And at the same time, thinking very much about the future. So we haven't rested on our laurels. We've also been thinking very much about next year and behind as well. So coming back to the continuity plan, by being swift in terms of getting people out of the offices and focused on what they needed to do, it allowed ourselves, well, one, they were in a safe environment and ensuring the continuity of the business. And then very rapidly, we focused towards safety of our retail staff and those in the DC. So again, at an early point, we started working on social distancing measures within the DC. And stores to a certain extent, albeit we knew they were going to close. And indeed, we had them all closed by the end of March. The DC was probably the area that was most problematic in a sense because there was so much conjecture in the press. I think guidelines from the government were quite limited at that point. We saw some retailers close, others stayed open. And what
limited
we did
is a very diplomatic word. It was a little confusing, fair to say.
So as a team, really, I actually went over and worked with James, who, bless him, had only started within our business a few weeks previous. So not only was he trying to get used to working within a new organisation, he was also balancing what was going on with this crisis. So. No, we worked with our team there on the measures that we were putting into place. We knew members of the workforce would rather be furloughed at that point to a degree, but we got a core group of 21 people together who went down to working one shift during a day, and that over time has grown back to numbers more on a par with what we would have had previously. But those guys really kept the business going alongside the work we were doing around our customer service team who were working remotely by that stage as well.
And so what patterns have you seen in online trading since the start of the pandemic?
In the main, very, very positive. I mean, if I speak of the period from beginning of April through to the end of last month, we're actually trading 37% up on last year. So that's gathered strength as time has gone on. I mean, in terms of behaviours, what we're seeing, people are spending more time actually reading emails, which in the past, email was seen as something that potentially was dying. But we've certainly seen more interest, and that could be related to the sort of content that we're serving up. I'll come back to that in a moment. But we've also seen more dwell time on particularly PCs, actually, which again, everything was shifting very much towards mobile, but we've seen customers using their desktops a lot more over this period. And certainly we can see it in the interaction on social media. And I think, again, as I mentioned a moment ago, we really took a good look at our content and the assets we had available. I think as a brand, we've always been pretty good at how we market the brand, the product. But I suppose we've taken an extra step to really link more with our customers. What we were finding, they don't just want to be sold to from a product perspective. It goes deeper than that.
Yeah.
We've always been pretty creative as a business, and obviously creativity links to hobbies. And clearly through this period, people have got their hobbies going again, and obviously we've helped to support that. So a lot of our activity on social media and some of the emails that we've been producing have been more about activities necessarily than just product.
The theme seems to be emerging that any brands that have that kind of very clear lifestyle focus have done particularly well online during all of this. Obviously, the type of product you're selling also has an influence, and we'll come on to that in a second. But that feeling of, I suppose, with Seasalt is a very clear brand identity. You've got very clear associations with a sort of a type of lifestyle, and it is, it does embrace actually a lot of stuff that, perhaps people would do outside of work. So I can see how you've been able to perhaps focus more of your content around that. But it sounds like the content you're doing, it's not just that your engagement levels are higher, but actually these are converting into sales. So can you tell us a bit about what is selling well? What have you found? Have you had to kind of pivot to doing more tops, for example? What on a granular level, what's doing well for you at the moment?
Our dresses in particular continue to go well. I mean, they do year in, year out, but they've still continued to resonate with the consumer. I think a lot of that is we've obviously had fantastic weather as well. So albeit people have been locked down, people have still been able to go out and walk, and the sort of prints that we've produced have really resonated with them from that point of view. Our jersey wear is always strong year in, year out. I mean, we've seen striped products become a little bit of a uniform for some customers in terms of their stay-at-home gear. And accessories in particular have been fabulous. I mean, I think our numbers between the period I mentioned a moment ago, so April and May, are around about 380% up on last year. And that's across the collection, but certainly things like handy bands have been very good for us.
So given that your online sales have been healthy and in fact better, stronger perhaps year on year, what's that meant in terms of your supply chain and how you've had to manage your kind of spring summer stock? Have you been able to clear some of the stock that was perhaps sitting in stores? Have you had to kind of reduce your orders and looking forward to autumn winter, what impact then is it having on your autumn winter buy?
Yeah, I mean, I think very, very early on we looked at what our product strategy would look like, not only this year but into next year. And I suppose some of the irony is that our initial concerns were how is the stock going to come through from the likes of China and India, and then of course the stock came through and the stores closed. So obviously we gave some thought to what that would mean for us in the longer term. And one of the things we were very conscious of is that as a brand, we've concentrated very much on full price sales over the years, certainly the last 2 or 3 years. So the answer was never going to be, we're just going to go into promotion and sale activity. So we are reinventing the product line for next year. So some of our stock that we have currently will be used again next year, and similar themes will run through the business, both on a spring, summer and early autumn winter basis. From an autumn winter 20 point of view, we have had to cancel some stock, but we've worked very closely with our suppliers in doing that. And I mean, obviously they've had their own issues as well. So some of that has been a balancing between what they could manage in terms of producing and equally what we now want. So that's actually gone very well for us, very, very positive for our relationships going forward with the suppliers.
And you mentioned discounting there, so you haven't had to rely on any discounting to bring people in online at all. You managed to keep things full price.
Yeah, we have. I mean, we run tactical promotions throughout the year anyway, which are fairly small. So we've still continued to do some of those. We have things like 2 for 40 offers on jersey type product. But no, we haven't promoted product heavily at all.
No blanket sales, yeah.
Yeah. And our intention really is hopefully to keep that going. We see the stores not opening in sale. We see the stores going to sell later in the summer.
You mentioned a digital transformation plan that you were already discussing in March, sort of as you were realizing that this was coming down the line. Was that good timing then, in the sense that you had a plan that you could accelerate, or was it actually just slightly bad timing in that you suddenly had to quickly redress everything that you'd planned and kind of come up with a different plan?
Yeah, well, of course it raises conversations around expenditure, but I think our view at that point was very much about the medium and longer term opportunity for the business. So work had started during late 2019 on a website replatform project anyway, and we'd spent a little bit more time thinking about what that meant for us as a business digitally across the board. So hence we'd gotten to March and it really fleshed out our plans and how we move that forward. And then when you get into April and you consider that, we have over 1,100 employees, and I think at its height we had 841 furloughed. But one of the areas that we continued with dedicated resource was on the web replatform program. So I cross my fingers slightly, but I'm hoping that next week the first stage of that happens, where we'll have an Irish site up and running as a first trial, and we still hope to have our new UK site and international capability up and running in August. So the team have been working really, really hard to make sure that we hit those deadlines, and if anything, working with our third parties, we've actually speeded that up over this period.
So what were the original priorities of that digital transformation? Was it just to increase the proportion of online sales as a proportion of the whole, or was it, you mentioned international sites, so was it more to enable you to expand more quickly online internationally?
It's kind of both, really. We've had a great partner in Blue Bolt over the years, but we were realising that in order to keep up with growth within the UK alone, we were probably needing to reinvest in our UK site. But historically, our international sales from online have always come through that UK site. So we were very conscious we needed to change that and ensure we had international sites up and running, and making sure we were trading in local currency and all those sort of things. So that's where we'll be from August onwards.
So I want to come to talk about, obviously, reopening stores, because that's a big thing that's about to happen. But just, I know we mentioned about this sort of engagement with customers, and we've actually had a question that was emailed in, I think, before we started, from someone who is signed up to receive your alerts as a customer, and says that they've actually been very impressed with the level of engagement. They said they love how you've been collaborating with local businesses to drive the business, so like local bakeries, for example, and they'd like to know, sort of, have you been able to track if this has had a positive impact on your local and loyal web-based customers, and has it impacted the wider business in a positive way? He or she also mentions making soda bread, so I presume the bakery bit is particularly of interest.
The answer is yes. We can see it in the general engagement with the business. It's certainly helped. I think when we look at our sustainability approach within the business, one of those was also supporting local communities, and at this point, obviously that became very much about Cornwall and what we could do for our partners down here. So I'm jumping ahead slightly, but there's another one actually which is connected to the store reopening as well. Our sanitisers are manufactured by a local gin business as well, Tarquin's. So there's a lot of little stories that we've developed that I think, when you knit them together, has really raised the profile of the business over this period.
And do you know if it's helped to improve the trade for those local businesses? Was that the goal, to sort of help give them a boost, or was it, just a kind of spirit of collaboration in terms of engaging?
Definitely a consideration, and one of us of the team actually, and I guess we're still yet to find that out. I mean, things are moving so fast. But I would definitely feel that it has, and it's something we'll continue to do into the future. I don't see this as something we're doing in this period now. I think we'll continue that for time to come.
Continue, yeah. In terms of your wider engagement with customers, what do you think has been resonating well? You mentioned the particular content you're doing around activities and hobbies and things like that. But what about in terms of your communications with customers about just what's going on with the business and how you're responding to the coronavirus crisis? How have you kind of managed that? What tone have you struck with it?
Well, I think, that's one of the important factors actually, because we did that quite early on, identifying what we were heading into and being very honest and open about the potential challenges around that. And I think also that was part of how we changed elements where we were marketing the brand anyway, because I think what we noticed was with competitors, there was clearly a cycle of still selling product and everything was remaining kind of the same.
Yeah.
Where, we did change significantly the way we were approaching things and identified this crisis from day one. We actually sent out separate communications to our customers, to our supply partners, and equally our wholesale partners, recognising the issue, informing them of things that we were doing about it, and obviously supporting where we could and still can.
Yeah, so just kind of pulling back from that overt selling and actually just being more about the communication side of it.
Yeah.
So coming on to the reopening of stores, obviously, at first we thought that it would be the 1st of June in England. Now it's the 15th of June in England. We're still not 100% clear on what it is in the rest of the UK. How have you planned for this? How are you doing this? Like, it just seems like an impossible task. But I mean, I guess the reality is you can reopen a chunk of stores from the 15th of June. So is that the plan? Is it going to be a phased reopening?
Yeah. So as part of our revival plan, clearly the stores were a major part of that. So dare I say, I actually set the task of being ready right back on the 18th of May, actually. So I guess it was wishful thinking to a certain extent. Might have been ready back then. But what it did mean is actually the guys have got a very comprehensive plan in place, which first and foremost reflects the safety measures that are required both for the customer and our staff that are returning to work. So quietly in the background, we've been running webinars with our management teams and talking them through how the stores are going to work, the safety measures that we've got in place, that they all feel fully ready. The area managers are already working in the business at the moment, getting things prepared. And in fact, we had some internal comms today, and I've noticed quite a number of our retail employees have engaged with them and are clearly feeling quite ready to come back to work. But we have comprehensive plans in place. They reflect all kinds of things, safety measures in terms of screens and PPE and that sort of thing. We've also got floor markings that have been put on the floors of all the stores already, which obviously cover the social distancing measures. They clearly will limit the number of both staff and customers we'll be able to have in the stores at any one time, but we've done a lot of work on understanding with each store how many staff and how many customers we can have in there at any one time. No doubt will lead to some queuing at some point, but we will have members of the team on the door managing that.
Okay.
Sanitizers I mentioned, which is both clearly a safety measure, but also quite a nice story from our point of view, in that it links quite nicely with working with another third party down here in Cornwall. And one other aspect that we're working on and we're trialling is how we use appointments. So we will open up 34 stores on the 15th of June, which is half the estate. and clearly centres mainly on England at this point in time.
Yep.
We'll learn as we go. The other 34 will follow probably around about 2 weeks later. So we have a period of learning to see how that's worked. We'll open from probably 10 o'clock in the morning till 4:30. That'll leave us some time either side of the day for appointments. But there may also be certain parts of the day that we'll give over to appointments as well. So we have a process in place working with our customer service team at the moment, and that'll all be going out very shortly to our customers, and we'll see what sort of uptake we get. But given some of the social media comments and the interaction with our customer service team, we do see there is a pent-up demand out there. People do actually want to see us open again.
Well, this is a thing we've been picking up on over the last few days from a lot of the retailers we've spoken to, is that they've gone from worrying about the impact on footfall to actually realising that given the social distancing measures that will need to be in place, sort of worrying more about there being an influx of customers that they'll struggle to manage. So I think we're now getting the sense that a lot of people will hold back from discounting in stores, for example. There won't be a big sale from many people when they reopen, because actually you don't want to have a rush coming in and then find that you've got to turn them away, or you have a huge queue going up the road to manage. So it's an interesting dilemma then, because obviously people have to try and clear through the stock in stores, so you're sort of a bit stuck in the middle. Yeah. Is that something you are sort of worried about planning for, in terms of, you mentioned that if there may be queues, but you'll have staff who will be able to kind of help with that. But do you think in the higher footfall areas, have you had any communication, for example, I don't know, are local governments looking into how they could handle a situation whereby you've got lots of queues on a high street, and who's responsible for managing that, for example?
Yeah, I mean, what we've seen so far, that becomes more of a local level thing in terms of retailers actually working together on that. And we have seen instances where some local authorities are trying to help with that. But at this point in time, we do see that the appointment approach is probably quite a positive one in trying to manage a situation where we might have higher footfall. There is, of course, obviously the other side of that, in that, what if we don't get the footfall return? So, there's concerns both ways, really.
Exactly. Tell me more about the appointments. So that's not something you've done before, is it? Appointments. So will that just be sort of on a first come first served basis for any customers who don't feel comfortable coming in and shopping during normal opening hours, basically?
Yeah, so we have a system in place with the team down here in Cornwall, that customers are able to come in and book a suitable time, and they will have that time to themselves. So they'll have a member of staff available to help them. So in some respects, it's a form of personal shopping.
Personal shopping, yeah.
Yeah, but it does mean, it's in the situation we're currently in, it's a very safe way of doing so as well.
So that's interesting. And are you going to offer any kind of one-to-one virtual appointments as well, or is this just going to be focused on stores? It's
stores at the moment. Yeah. I mean, we've still got work to do on the technology side, obviously with the new sites, etc. But that is potentially something we'll look out for the future.
Okay, that's interesting. And then just with the reopening of stores, I mean, as you mentioned there, that there's this kind of dual worry about either not enough people or too many people coming back into stores, and how you manage either of those. I mean, what do you think the future of the high street is going to look like if footfall remains low for a period of time? The reality is that some stores are just not going to be viable, are they? They're cost intensive. So are you looking at how you can reduce costs? For example, are you renegotiating on rents with landlords? Are you looking at how else you can bring down the cost base of those stores? Yeah,
I mean, that's a constant conversation. You have to, I mean, that's good housekeeping in terms of running your business anyway. I mean, I think what this situation has done, it's probably speeded up the whole move towards online. But we still, and always have done, consider that there is a role for the stores to play, and I think more than ever, it's very much about the links to your community, the additional services. We spent a lot of time last year talking to the stores about how they actually interact with online. You know, it's not a separately run business, and we put a new omni-channel stock system in place, which means that the customer, if they come online, you know, if the stock actually isn't no longer available in the warehouse, they can actually purchase it from the store, and the store customers, and the store staff can actually process that and make sure they get their items. So there's other roles that the retail staff play within the organisation now, other than just running the store as well.
And do you do click and collect? Or is that something you're looking at? Yeah, we had a one of these Drapers Connects we did with Clipper, and they were talking about the importance of click and collect going forwards, because stores will become even more, you know, have a bigger role to play in terms of being that convenience point where people can return. Yeah. What about the sort of actual handling stock during the rest of this pandemic, that I'm still optimistically hoping we are going to come out of the back of it and not have another wave of infections? We'll leave that to the one side at the moment, but just, you know, as we kind of reopen stores and we emerge from lockdown, what will you do in terms of keeping your stock moving through as quickly as possible, but obviously taking all the necessary precautions when it comes to cleaning, decontaminating, quarantining stock where you need to?
Yeah. I mean, again, that's all part of the guidelines the teams have got. So we will isolate any returns, and they will be safely put away and dealt with over time. When customers have coming out, I mean, the changing rooms will be closed when we're open generally. There is an opportunity that potentially we.
Oh, I think we've lost your video. You're back.
Oh, there is potentially we can use the changing rooms when we run the appointments, because that's all about making sure we clean down properly after specific customers have used them. But I mean, the guys have got very strict guidelines on making sure we're cleaning down on a regular basis within the store.
I'm interested in your view as well on the actual, what the high street itself is going to look like. You know, you've mentioned it, most people we've spoken to have mentioned it. It is accelerating the shift online. It's not to say that stores aren't going to have a role going forwards, that you know, I don't personally believe that's ever really been, no one's ever really believed that. It's just that they're going to have a different role and perhaps a smaller part to play in some retailers, you know, as a channel mix. So what do you think the long-term impact of the current crisis is going to have on the high street? Do you think it's going to change the way that people shop longer term?
I think potentially yes. I mean, we mentioned a moment ago about the shift to online. I mean, I think it's still very much about the combination of the two. If you get your customer experience right in store, I mean, one of the things we definitely see in the data at the moment, there's a store customer who hasn't converted to online. You know, there is pent-up demand. She's asking when we're opening. She wants to interact with the staff. We get a lot of comments that come back about how great our staff are. And indeed, as I mentioned earlier, you know, our staff are clearly looking forward to getting back and doing their job. So I think providing you've still got an experience that people want to have, they will still come. I mean, whether we get to the size of estates that people have had in the past is another question, I think.
Well, I think to the point that was made by one of the viewers before about, you know, partnering with the local businesses, there's definitely still a strong appetite for, you know, supporting your local independent businesses and therefore kind of, you know, going out onto the high street. And again, from my own personal view, is that once you have restaurants and pubs reopening and people get back to a form of feeling safer, going back to that kind of form of normality, that actually we'll see things pick up again. But we obviously, yeah, as you say, those retailers with a really large estate, perhaps we'll see those shrink even further. And so that does mean we're going to probably see more empty shops. And I guess it's the quite big question is what the actual, you know, majority of UK high streets will look like after this, if some of those bigger anchor retailers have pulled out. But yeah, it's kind of crystal ball stuff, really, isn't it, with that?
Yeah, I mean, we've always done a lot of research before opening stores, and and would continue to do so. I mean, you know, are we set to open a lot more? No, I mean, we do still have a couple to open this year. and will do so. And one of those, actually, we're using the opportunity to trial a new concept around fixturing, which is, well, one, slightly less expensive, which certainly helps the combination of costs within a store, but is also hugely more sustainable. So part of our sustainability plan, Seasalt Light's been developed over the last 12 months, and we will pilot that in Norwich at the end of the summer.
Okay, interesting. Is there any more you can tell us about that in terms of the detail of it?
Well, we literally signed off on it last week, so it'll make its first appearance in the marketplace at the end of August. It should be. Yeah.
Okay. And with your sustainability strategy, to what extent has that been affected by the coronavirus pandemic? Have you had to put anything on hold, or is it taking longer perhaps to make some of the changes within the business that you might otherwise have been planning to make this year?
To an extent, yes, because we have had members of the workforce that have been furloughed. That being said, the teams that have been working have certainly been working on the product side of things. So we have been continuing our work around our relationship with the ETI and the mapping of our suppliers and having a greater understanding in terms of who they are from a factory and mill perspective, and making sure we're working with the most ethical suppliers out there. From a product perspective, the team have continued looking at how we progress our work around the most sustainable fabrics, so particularly cotton, what we're doing on that side.
Okay.
Volunteering was a big thing for us over the last 12 months, and I'm sure those staff that have been furloughed, certainly from a retail perspective, well, in fact, I know a number of them have still been busy out there doing volunteering work. So a lot of that is still moving forward.
The sort of social responsibility side of it, as well as the environmental.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of interest from people watching around your wholesale, the wholesale side of the business. So how it's been affected, what plans are in place going forwards. Is that something you can share some insight into? Someone else has asked, what are your plans for wholesale in terms of managing discounting with your retail channels, future expansion? So yeah, there's a lot of interest around what your plans are, I suppose, not just around the current impact, but going forwards.
Yeah. I mean, we've worked very closely, and hopefully our wholesale partners would freely admit that we've worked closely with them in terms of spring stock. We have actually cancelled a lot of stock that the guys felt they wouldn't be able to consume. There's a healthy thing in that it means that nobody's discounting that stock, and we can reuse it for full price purposes next year. We are currently talking to them about autumn winter 20 and how we'll deliver that. And we've been spending some time looking at our calendar, our product calendar, and seeing how we can perhaps slightly realign things. I know it's been in the press a fair bit about where that might lead. And it might mean that we actually go to market with our wholesale partners slightly later than we do at the moment.
Yeah.
But it realigns our calendars in a better way. So that's something we're literally discussing as a team right now. But as it stands, there are product people back in the offices this week for the first time. They're getting the samples through, and we're getting ready for spring 21.
With that, as you say, it's a big subject for debate in the industry at the moment around sort of resetting fashion, moving back the sale periods to a more sensible time of year. I mean, you obviously have a fairly sort of clear stance on full price trading anyway, but I'm interested to know about the kind of where the balance of power lies in that relationship. You're having conversations with retailers about, hopefully delivering in the orders a bit later in the season and presumably holding off on discounting them. But ultimately, who makes that call? I mean, if this is a big multinational retailer and they want to go into sale, is there much you can do about it? Would you go so far as to say, actually, okay, we'll reconsider this relationship and we'll seek another stockist?
I don't think we enter into a relationship that potentially puts us into that place, to be honest, over the years. Yeah. If I look at things we've said no to, sometimes it is because of that very reason. So no, I mean the vast majority of our wholesale business is still very much independent led. And we're very thankful for that. We do operate with some other partners like Next, for instance, but they work with a similar calendar to us. It's a very good relationship.
Yeah, so you've actually picked your partners partly based on their approach to things like end of season selling.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
We're sort of running out of time, unfortunately, but I just wanted to, I know you mentioned the move to eBay, and I wondered if you could tell us a bit more about why and when you decided to move on to selling through eBay, and what the outcome of that has been so far.
Yeah, that was something we talked about for a fair while, and I had never really got round to doing anything about it. And whilst I had the digital team fully employed and working on the replatform project, we felt, well, actually, what a good time to try and do this. And equally, it just does generate cash, but it's also extending the life cycle of product. So the way we operate it runs out of our markdown store in Penryn, which is a local store we've had for a number of years. But the product is actually based there. The team have been managing it, and it's just it's been another sort of valuable cash generation piece for us, I guess, over this period. But what we have seen is a number of customers have migrated from having entered into eBay. They've then migrated to our full price site and purchased. So clearly there's something more in that.
That's interesting. I wonder if more people will start doing that, particularly as they look for different ways to clear stock. As we say, it's not going to be as simple as just running a large sale event in stores as they reopen. So perhaps those sort of off-price channels will become more important.
Absolutely.
Was there ever any hesitation around going onto a platform where perhaps you don't have as much control over this sort of, the trading environment that you're in when you sell direct to consumer, or you have these carefully selected independents and other wholesale partners, you maybe have a bit more control over the environment?
Yeah. I mean, we have had approaches from certain platforms, certain other retail businesses in the past. And as I think I mentioned earlier, it is a big part of our consideration as to what then happens, because the whole full price strategy really is about maintaining the integrity of our brand. It's also being more profitable, hopefully, but it is about maintaining integrity.
Yeah. With the wholesale questions that were coming in, it sort of made me think actually to ask about the balance between wholesale and direct to consumer, and how do you have plans to kind of shift the proportions at all? Are you going to do more direct to consumer retail going forwards, or is it, do you think it's at the right point just now in terms of the balance between the two?
Yeah, I mean, I think the balance has changed over time, clearly, as we've opened more stores and the website does, but our independent partners tend to be in areas of the country where we're not and don't have plans to be. And I think our full price strategy clearly has resonated with them, because they've continued to buy the product. And I get a lot of feedback anecdotally from the team that people are very happy that we trade that way, because it supports their business as well. So I don't see that changing. We also use wholesale in terms of our international plans and market entry as well. So, we still consider that a model that works for us. Yeah.
With the international side of it, has that has expansion there? Have you kind of put that on hold for the moment? What are your kind of future plans?
Yeah, no, not on hold. I mean, it's we're being considered about things. I mean, we've seen Germany, Switzerland and the Netherlands open up sooner than we have. So we've already been shipping product to our customers over there. New Zealand continue. I mean, they seem to have done a very good job all round. And they've continued to take stock and deliveries for the forthcoming season. So that's not stopped. We've still got a lot of interest coming from the US, additional parts of the country that we're not currently in. And obviously the new international sites later on in August will be a big thing for us internationally.
What about your team in terms of, I would have thought that your designers, your buyers would normally travel internationally a lot. Are you currently kind of keeping people grounded, so to speak. This is something that I don't think we need to look into a bit more from the Drapers' perspective, is like, what is the impact going to be longer term of flying around less international travel in fashion generally?
Yeah, I think potentially that will be the case. People will travel less, but it's about how you can utilise technology in terms of gaining knowledge, improving what you do. I mean, we have a number of technology-based projects that we're working on with the product team at the moment, which are probably a little way off, but they will be linked to sustainability, traveling less samples in the business, hopefully. So there's a lot of things that you can do that are very positive from that perspective.
And do you think that technology is there at the moment for the product development side of things? There are some. Has this pandemic kind of accelerated the shift, and will you continue to do things digitally going forwards, even once we come out of the back of this? When it comes to
we're striving towards that. I mean,
yeah.
I would say that's a sort of secondary part of our digital transformation, really. The first part being trading channels and what we're doing, but then there's also about how you create your product in the first place at the back end. So that's probably gathered a bit of momentum during this time as well. But certainly something we're very interested in delivering for the future.
Yeah, it certainly seems like innovation is going to be, as it often is with times of hardship, innovation can be one of the good things that you can take forwards, and it forces us all to change, sometimes in good ways as well as bad. Certainly there's a feel that with the discounting, with the sustainability side of things, perhaps that this will have a good impact on the industry longer term around slowing down the pace of fashion.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And just finally, I did briefly mention a second wave earlier, not to be too doomsday about it, but is that something that you're planning for as an eventuality? So what you would do if there was another sort of uplift in infections and we had to perhaps even look at a second lockdown?
We are conscious of it, yeah. And I mean, I think the plans that we've had in place for this time round clearly would come back into play. Yeah. We are mindful of it. I mean, it's not something we can affect right now. So, our plans are what they are at this point. But yeah, we do have that in the back of our minds.
Brilliant. Well, unfortunately, we've run out of time, but thank you so much, Paul, for taking part today. And thanks to everybody who's watching for all of the brilliant questions as well that you're sending in. Hopefully I've fielded as many of those as possible to Paul. Drapers Connects will be back on Tuesday at the slightly later time of 4 p.m. when we will speak to the British Retail Consortium CEO about store reopenings, going into a lot of what we just discussed with Paul, of course, social distancing and the future of retail. So visit drapersonline.com/connects to register for all future digital events. Thanks again and see you next time.